Hi, welcome to our Wednesday webinar on contextualized instruction in the IET classroom. I'm excited to spend our time exploring how contextualized instruction can transform the learning experience and integrate education and training, or IET classrooms. We'll be diving into some practical strategies and examples today, so whether you're new to IET or looking to refine your approach, there's something here for everyone. My name is Vanessa Alvarez, and I'm an instructional resource for Collier Adult Education. I work with both our online classes and our IET programs, and I've been fortunate to be involved with IET for the past 3 years. I'm also thrilled to be a new IET Day panelist this year. Like many of you, we're always striving to improve and enhance our IET programs. I'm excited to share some insights with you today on how we can take these programs to the next level together. And I've also included my email so that if you want to know more about anything that you see today, you are welcome to email me. Before we begin, please remember to use the Q&A for questions, as all attendees' microphones will be muted and they'll be in listen-only mode. We know that there will be questions along the way, so don't hesitate to ask your questions in the Q&A section as we go. Finally, today's presentation is being recorded. It will be available on the IET Day website within 48 hours for you to reference in the future. So today, we're going to dive into the world of contextualized instruction within the IET classroom. To guide our discussion, we'll focus on some key questions that will help us fully understand its purpose and the impact. So first, what is contextualized instruction? Why is it important, especially in IET programs? How does contextualized instruction engage adult learners? We're also going to explore examples to bring these concepts to life. I know I learn best if I can see it in action or real-world applications. And then finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the resources that are already available to you to help you enhance and support your IET programs. So what exactly is contextualized instruction in an IET program? So at its core, it's an instructional strategy that integrates academic basic skills like math and reading with the technical and career-specific skills of the IET topic. Whether it's nursing assistant, manufacturing, or any other field, problem solving and real-world applications are central to the approach. And in IET, we integrate academic, technical, and employability skills. So we don't just teach them in isolation or separately. Instead, we teach them together within the context of the IET focus. This makes learning more cohesive and relevant. Again, later, we're going to explore some of these examples to see how it works in action. And then finally, contextualized instruction helps engage learners by making the content directly relevant to their academic and career goals, keeping them motivated and focused on their future. So why is contextualized instruction important in an IET classroom? So I know that many of us have heard this question before as educators, which is, why do I need to know this? And that question, why do I need to know this, has relevant and practical answers for students of any age. First, with relevance and engagement, by integrating academic content with career and technical education, students are going to see the relevance of what they're learning. This increases motivation and engagement, and learners can directly apply their knowledge to job-specific tasks. So it's going to make their education more meaningful. Accelerated learning. Contextualized instruction helps students acquire both academic and technical skills simultaneously. Instead of learning these subjects in isolation, they're taught in a way that mirrors real-life situations. This can speed up learning and help students reach their educational and career goals even faster. Improved retention. When students can immediately apply academic concepts to hands-on, work-related activities, they're more likely to retain that information. This practical application reinforces learning and leads to better long-term retention of skills and knowledge. Increased learning outcomes. Many adult learners in IET programs may struggle with traditional approaches to education, especially if they've been out of school for a long time. In fact, a lot of our adult students were probably those students in high school that were always asking, why do we need to know this? So contextualized instruction supports them by connecting abstract academic concepts to tangible experiences in the workforce. Workforce readiness, IET programs aim to prepare students for specific careers. So contextualized instruction helps ensure that students not only understand academic content, but can also apply that knowledge to the technical skills they'll need in the workplace. This makes them job ready upon completion of the program. And then finally, it increases confidence. When students see themselves succeeding in tasks that directly relate to their career goals, it boosts their self-confidence. This is particularly important for adult learners who may feel uncertain about returning to education. Overall, contextualized instruction makes learning more dynamic, directly linking education with the skills needed for success in the workplace, which is the core goal of IET programs. So the next few slides, we're going to be looking at some real life examples, right? Because it's one thing to explain contextualized instruction, but it's another to see it in action. So for each of these examples, we always want to keep the end in mind for our outcomes and essential skill areas. So this means that before we plan our curriculum or instruction, we need to consider what it is that students need to be able to do to be successful in their next step. So let's just start with the nursing assistant class. This is a class that we have with our program that's seen a lot of success. In this class, we know that the students will need to pass the certification exam and be ready for employment. So in our program, they challenged the Florida Board of Nursing in order to get that certification. So they will need to know both the content or the book knowledge, and they will need to know the clinical skills. Because they're challenging the board, they don't already have clinical experience, per se, they have to demonstrate the skills to the exam panel. But we know they don't just have to pass a test. We also need to make sure that the students are going to be successful in employment. So what they'll need to know, right, is they're going to have those clinical skills. They're going to have effective communication, not just with their patients, but their colleagues and their employers. They're going to have critical thinking and problem-solving skills because they're going to need to be able to think on their feet. So we need to make sure that we're going to be teaching all of those skills, not just to a test. And then this little graphic here at the bottom, you can see that this is a progression in the healthcare pathway. So they aren't just participating in a course, but we're trying to move them to what's next. So to employment, and then eventually further technical training for most of them. So knowing that the nursing assistant class must teach technical, clinical skills and communication in tandem, let's look at one lesson that demonstrates this. So in this example lesson, the students are learning about the chain of infection and personal protection equipment, which we call PPE. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be watching a video that introduces the skill of hand washing. So in our everyday lives, we know hand washing is important, but to a nursing assistant, it's a crucial skill that follows specific protocol. And even the skill of hand washing is something that's tested. So to make sure that students fully understand, the adult ed or literacy teacher, we have a two-teacher model, the adult ed teacher is going to front load them with vocabulary and important concepts. And then during the video, they're going to stop periodically to discuss what's happening with the students, go over that terminology, and check for understanding. After the teacher feels the students have a good understanding of the video's presentation of the clinical skill, then they go to the lab with the RN teacher. This is the RN teacher over here in this picture. And the RN teacher is going to demonstrate the skill of hand washing again. So they're going to see it again while also narrating as she demonstrates. So she's modeling. This will be expected of the students when they take the certification exam. So it's really important that the RN demonstrates articulating or narrating what it is she's doing while she's demonstrating the skill of hand washing. Finally, the students take turns demonstrating the skill while also narrating what they're doing throughout the demonstration. So in this lesson, they're learning both the clinical skill while practicing communication skills and employability skills, all within the context of the chain of infection and PPE. And I just wanted to throw in one more strategy that the teachers use in this program. It's not what's here on this slide, but I think it's really helpful for also understanding another example of contextualized instruction in this particular class. But they've had students work in groups of 3 to practice clinical skills as well. You know, we've been talking about hand washing, but a skill where working in groups of 3 is especially valuable is a skill like ambulating a patient from the bed to the wheelchair using a gait belt. So if you can visualize a patient that needs to move from a hospital bed to a wheelchair, the nursing assistant needs to move them safely using this gait belt. One student will be the nursing assistant role, moving the patient. One will be the role of the patient being moved. And then we're going to have the third one be the role of the board of nursing evaluator. So they're one of the evaluators. And they're watching this play out and evaluating whether the nursing assistant is doing it correctly, while also making sure they're narrating what they're doing and explaining what they're doing. So they take turns in these roles. They don't just see the perspective of the nursing assistant when they do this, but they're seeing other perspectives as well. So with the role of the evaluator, they become more self-reflective when it's their turn to perform the skill, because they're seeing it from more of an objective and critical lens. And they're also able to empathize with the patient perspective. They now understand more clearly why it is important to communicate clearly with your patient and with compassion about what they're doing. Being a patient is a very vulnerable role to play. So this is not going to just help them on the test, but it's going to help them with their future employability, their employability skills. So to wrap up the hand washing lesson, the teacher brings it back to that broader topic. The students articulate back to the teacher why hand washing is important in this context. This is contextualized instruction, basically in action. Of course, this also ties directly to that certification exam where they will have to demonstrate and articulate the skill. And then this picture here, I'd like to throw this in. This is last year's nursing assistant students, this spring semester, I should say. They all took the certification exam on the same day. And of those students who tested that day, 100% of them passed the test. And we believe it is due to the fact that all the content, the skills, communication, the employability skills, they're always working together in tandem throughout the class. And then 4 of these students were just recently employed by our local community hospital shortly after they passed the exam. And they're currently working as clinical technicians, which is the title that the hospital uses for their nursing assistants. So at least one of these students turned employees is already registered to continue his education in the LPN or practical nursing program here at the local technical college. So they're on that career pathway. Later in this webinar, I'll talk a little bit about how we're checking back with the employer and making sure that we're preparing our students well for employment. So I am going to just pivot for just a second here, and I'd like to take a moment to also illustrate how we set this up in our learning management system. So we use Canvas, and you can see here that the entire lesson I just showed you is spelled out in Canvas for our students to also interact with the content there. So it's not just where our curriculum is housed, although that is an especially useful way to use this, but it's also another way that our students digest and make meaning of the content and the skills. So let's just look briefly at the articulate section. So they do this at the end of the lesson where they're able to articulate in writing everything that they have learned about the chain of infection, PPE, and the skill of hand washing. Not only are students having to articulate the skill of hand washing, but they're articulating the broader topic of the chain of infection and showing how everything fits together. Basically, they're demonstrating their understanding of contextualized instruction. We also make sure that the students see that we have achieved the outcomes and learning goals that we set up for them at the beginning of the module or the lesson. This helps with that relevancy. So students already know that whatever it is that they're going to be doing is going to be relevant, and it's going to be coming full circle at the end of each of the lessons. Okay, I'm going to pivot back here. All right, so let's take a look at a different IET. This is our Intro to Manufacturing class. In our program, our Intro to Manufacturing class is still kind of in its beginning stages. We're always evolving, trying to figure out how we can improve it. However, we know that we do have some goals for our students at the end of the class. We want them to either go into the Machining Technologies program at the Technical College, which is a full-time program, or we want them to gain entry-level employment with a local manufacturing company. And finally, we want to make sure that we are giving them credentials of value. So what I mean by credentials of value is we're having them get certified in something that's of value to the employer or to the Machining Technologies program when they leave the IET. So in our case, we're using OSHA 10. So that's Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And the 10 stands for the hours of instruction needed to complete the certification. This isn't on our master credentials list for IETs, but it's something that every employer will require of their employees, safety. And we also know that it's something that's required in the Machining Technologies program. So if we can get them OSHA 10 certified now, they will be ahead of the game, making them more employable, something they can put on their resume, or they're able to move more quickly through the Machining Technologies full-time program. So no matter whether they're going straight into employment or into the Machining Technologies program, the students are going to need contextualized instruction that helps them with basic academic skills of reading the content, so reading comprehension. They need to understand what they're reading. They will need to know and demonstrate precise measurement and conversion. They will be using technical problem-solving skills. Safety protocols are of utmost importance. And they're going to need to have the employability skills of teamwork and collaboration, as well as time management and efficiency. That's a lot to learn when you look at everything individually, but they can be integrated together with contextualized instruction. So let's look at an example lesson that demonstrates contextualized instruction in the Intro to Manufacturing class. We know that we want them to have basic tool knowledge and use, while also being able to communicate about what they're using, how they use it, and why they're using it. So this lesson was specifically about the multimeter, which measures voltage. I knew nothing about the multimeter until Intro to Manufacturing, and now I know all about it. You can see that we have an adult ed or literacy teacher here alongside our content teacher. So the content teacher, he's explaining the function and purpose of the multimeter and measuring electrical currents and voltage. Next, the content teacher is going to demonstrate how to use the multimeter to measure voltage. And the adult ed teacher, he's not just sitting there and watching, he's going to be asking clarifying questions to help the students feel comfortable, asking their own questions, as well as checking to make sure the students are following along and understanding. And if they don't, they're going to stop. They're going to, check, make sure that they understand the terminology, and then they can resume. And then next, the students take turns practicing with the teacher in the moment using the multimeter. So the students are learning how to measure voltage with a multimeter, but before they just start connecting it to random things, they need to learn about electrical currents, voltage, multimeter settings. Both the adult ed and content teacher broke down these concepts throughout the lesson instead of teaching them in isolation. Not to say that there wasn't front loading, because there was, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later. But after the teacher has demonstrated and involved them in the process, the roles become reversed, and now the students are the teachers. And they're showing how to properly use a multimeter, and they're talking about it as they do so. They're articulating what they're doing. The teachers are going to periodically stop and ask them some questions to help reinforce the concepts. And the students are going to be able to prove that they understand the entire thing. So I'm going to show you that part in our learning management system, our Canvas. And Just pivot over here. Okay, so this is just some of the front loading, what some of the front loading of vocabulary looks like in this particular Canvas course. So this is just one part of a module about measuring voltage with a multimeter. So in this section, the teacher leads the students through some short videos about basic circuits, measuring voltage, proper use of the multimeter. The teacher stops periodically or often to discuss and go over vocabulary. There's front loading that they do before they do the hands-on part. And you can see that they do things in class like they're drawing a closed circuit or doing a continuity check with drawing. So they're going to be taking this learning into their hands-on activity. And what they learn here is brought with them, and they're able to see the connection between the academic content, why they need to know that content, the relevancy, and they're doing problem solving. They're solving real world problems that they might see in a manufacturing site. Okay, back here. Okay, so sorry about that. Our last example is of our paraprofessional preparation program. Students in the paraprofessional program, they're going to need two things by the end of the course. They're going to need to successfully pass the certification exam. Without that certification exam, they can't be a parapro. And they need to be ready for immediate employment as a parapro. In order to be successful in both, they need to have an understanding of how children learn, how to work with them as well as their future colleagues, and a firm understanding of professionalism in the workplace. So this example is going to be showing how professionalism is taught in a contextualized manner. And we might take professionalism for granted, but that is something that needs to be directly taught, especially in something as important as working with children in the schools. So again, our focus is on professionalism in the role of a paraprofessional. We start by taking a deep dive into ethics and professionalism by reading actual documents from the local school district. So this is going to be crucial for them to be employed as a parapro. There's a lot of challenging vocabulary, especially in the code of ethics. So the teacher is going to help them break that down. And then as a class, they will also discuss possible scenarios and best answer solutions to those scenarios. The student will practice demonstrating professionalism either with a colleague, a classmate, family member, or even students if they're already working in the school system. So in our particular program, we've experienced this a lot. There are often students of ours who are already employed in the school system. So there are paraprofessional students and they're working in the school system. And they're able to practice their skills and apply the content knowledge of the class while on the job. The picture on this slide is one of our students, our past students, demonstrating how to work with a small group of students, practicing that professionalism with actual students from her workplace. So in this lesson, she's demonstrating what she's learned about professionalism while working with, actual students. Talk about relevancy. And then after this initial lesson, the students continue by evaluating their own strengths and areas of improvement within the code of ethics or professionalism. They will plan to work on those areas of improvement, recognizing that those are part of their employability skills and crucial to their workplace success. They will share these insights with their classmates and teacher, and then they demonstrate through role-playing appropriate professional behavior. So since this is our last example, I just want to make sure that I show you what that looks like in our Canvas learning management system. So you can see here that this is our module on professionalism and collaboration as a paraprofessional. The entire lesson is played out here in this module. So let's just start here with activate. You can see in this part of the activate section where they're activating their prior knowledge. This is where we're front loading some of the more difficult terms they're going to see in the code of ethics. So in class, they discuss this in detail, but they can also refer back to this Canvas page at any point to circle back or remind themselves of what these terms mean. And then they're going to go ahead to the next part and read the code of ethics. This is our local school district's professional dress guidelines. And then there's an article on professionalism. So this is going to be where they do their heavy reading comprehension. They're looking at the vocabulary, making sure they understand all of it within the context of being a paraprofessional. And then that's going to lead them to do a self-evaluation. So this is where they're going to, really be honest with themselves, think about what things they might need to work on or improve on before they become employed as a parapro. And then they're going to demonstrate that they understand these things, but in the context of scenarios. So we give them scenarios and then they have to choose the best answer based on what they already know about the code of ethics and professionalism. And then finally, articulating is where all the aspects of the contextualized instruction are reflected here. So the students are putting it all together, they're reflecting on our learning. So for our program, it's important that everything we do in our hands-on learning is reflected in our learning management system and vice versa. It helps keep us accountable for making sure we're preparing our students for the workplace, certification, technical skills, and employability skills, and also gives our students a space to demonstrate their learning by reading, writing, and problem solving. Okay. Here we go. So one thing I definitely want to talk about a little bit more in depth is how important it is to involve your partners in this process. So in our IET programs, partners are indispensable. Engaging with them is not just a formality, it's a critical component for ensuring that our programs are aligned with current industry needs and trends. So here's some reasons why it's so important and how you can implement it. First, consulting employer and community partners. Regularly consulting with our employer and community partners is key to keeping our IET goals relevant. These partners offer insights into the evolving needs of the industry and provide valuable feedback on our program's effectiveness. By maintaining open communication, we can adjust our curriculum to reflect these insights and better prepare our students for the job market. An advisory committee. If you don't already have an advisory committee, consider starting one. You might begin by reaching out to a few key employer partners. Even a small advisory group, can provide critical input. Just as an example, we started with just one employer partner. Our first employer partner was human resources from our local school district. And we were able to develop a reciprocal relationship where we were providing them with great parapros, employees, and they were helping us inform our program and revising where we saw maybe we weren't preparing them for all aspects of being a paraprofessional. And there's employability skills that the principals find to be especially important. So starting with just one even is a great way to start. And over time, you can expand your committee to include more partners, creating a broader network of support. Seeking feedback from employers for students who have already secured employment, such as those working in local businesses after certification, obtaining feedback from their employers is awesome. It's invaluable. So for instance, I mentioned that a few of our nursing assistant graduates are now employed at our local community hospital. So we are now actively seeking their feedback, the employer's feedback, to understand what are we doing well as an IET provider and where might we need to make adjustments. And we're not looking into our former students' particular situations. We're not asking for their names connected with those sorts of things. Instead, we're looking at identifying trends and helping us pinpoint broader patterns and areas for improvement. And then conducting workplace site visits. Organizing workplace site visits can offer profound insights into the real-world application of skills. So whether you visit with your IET students or alone, this helps bridge the gap between classroom learning and actual job environments. So as an example, if you're teaching an intro to manufacturing class, seeing a manufacturing business in operation is going to give you a much clearer picture of what skills are truly essential and how they're applied in practice. I know for us, for me specifically, I didn't really know much about manufacturing at all. And I definitely didn't know much about manufacturing in my local community. But then we saw several different workplace sites, and it really opened up our minds to what manufacturing looks like in our local community. And it's not a dirty, loud factory. So we were really able to not just adjust how we wanted to teach the class, but our perspectives, and also help with our future students' perspectives to help get them the right idea before they even join our class. So this firsthand experience can help you refine your curriculum to better meet industry standards and expectations. By integrating these practices, we ensure that our IET programs remain relevant and effective, equipping our students with the skills and knowledge that they need to succeed in their careers. And I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you do have any questions, always feel free to put them in the Q&A section. And I am happy to also share some of these things that I've showcased with you if you would like to know more about these specific things. So before we conclude, I do want to highlight a major resource that can be incredibly useful for planning contextualized instruction in your IET programs. On the IPDAY website, there's a dedicated tab for IET. And by navigating to this tab, you'll find the IET Assistance Center. This center offers a wealth of resources, including a starting guide, an IET playbook, excellent tools for developing and enhancing your contextualized instruction strategies. And if you want to know more about that, there was an IPDAY webinar held just last month, and it's on the website, that provided a deep dive into those resources. So I highly recommend checking it out for a more comprehensive understanding of how to utilize those tools effectively. These resources are designed to support you in creating impactful and relevant IET programs. I encourage you to explore them and see how they can benefit your own instructional planning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would love to hear from you about today's webinar. Please take a moment to complete the IPDAY survey that will be popping up on your screen. And if you found today's webinar helpful, you may be interested in connecting to our next webinar, which is our Tech Tuesday, and that's going to be September 24th at 1 p.m. The topic is using AI to develop digital literacy, language, life, and work skills. So if you're interested, we encourage you to go onto the IPDAY website to register. We'd love to see you there. And thank you so much again for attending today. We look forward to seeing you all in our next webinar.